Welcome to Season 2 of Busting Addiction and its Myths, sponsored by Safe House Rehab Thailand, where we offer a modern approach to recovery, breaking with tradition by introducing new technologies that help disrupt the cycle of addiction. To learn more, visit us at safehouserehab.com and click on the video, or contact us at info@safehouserehab.com, and we'll tell you about our $1,000 airfare allowance and referral rewards program. My name is Bruno J., and here's why I created this podcast. Our research has shown that despite the opioid epidemic and the worldwide panic over the ravages of addiction, we didn't see that treatment centers were doing anything different to break the cycle more effectively and improve the odds of long-term success. So we have set out to do things differently and to let all those who love an addict or alcoholic know more about the advances in treatment that we represent. Here's what we're doing differently. We have designed our diagnostics and detox to isolate and treat opioid and multi-addiction, example, alcohol plus opioids plus speed, more effectively, given that these are the new challenges of addiction in the 21st century. We integrate leading-edge technology into the recovering process, thereby disrupting the disorder, speeding the recovery of brain health. Clients come to treatment with damaged brains. This is a given. We pay attention to the importance of dopamine and other ingredients vital to brain health recovery. Traditional rehabs don't provide anywhere near the tools and close guidance that clients truly need to help keep them clean and sober for life. We do it right. First, we advise our clients to go into our sober living facility to serve as a transition to normal life, and we absolutely outperform traditional rehabs when it comes to providing a structure for long-term recovery. So if you love an addict or alcoholic and you feel like your loved one is sucking the oxygen out of your life, is stealing your money, stealing your peace of mind and your sanity, this podcast is for you. If you're feeling rage and shame and he or she is living rent-free in your head 24/7, this podcast is for you. I hope to have you gain a better understanding of the nature of addictive disorder and the invisible effect it has on your psyche. It's my fervent hope you also gain a little more compassion for your loved one and for yourself, in spite of this cunning, baffling, and powerful disease. To paraphrase an author in this space, we struggle because we love. Welcome to episode number 8 of Season 2, which we'll call Tony Sounds Off. We started our podcast about 17 weeks ago, and we release a new episode each and every week. We're closing in on an audience of 1,000 regular listeners, so it is exceptionally gratifying to realize that our podcast seems to be helping people who have an addict or an alcoholic whom they love dearly, but whose behavior is causing great distress. And the cause of that is difficult to understand. But that understanding comes a little easier when you get some insight into how an addict or an alcoholic who is active in their addiction actually thinks and what he or she is up against when it comes to getting and staying clean and sober. Because there are some real barriers. I want to bring back my dear young genius friend Tony, who will give you a reality check and insights on what to watch for if your loved one does get to the point, one way or another, of accepting help and entering treatment, and or try sincerely to make the U-turn and get on to a healthy path of life. Tony, welcome back.
Hi Bruno, thank you again, and thanks for having me.
Sure enough, you always give us great insight, and as a young person in recovery, 30-year-old guy, a Brit, which makes you smarter than the average American, can share your insight on your challenges. Wait, why are you chuckling? Because it's true. No, he's got a great story to tell. And, you know, I'm older. I'm of the boomer generation. I recovered, I threw in the towel about 26 years ago. So am I to be believed, particularly by younger people, or is Tony a better messenger because he's of the generation? And he has a better understanding of the perceptual barriers that young people trying to recover have in their heads. So I keep emphasizing, too, that active addicts and alcoholics are operating with damaged brains. But the scientific evidence for that is a slam dunk. It's overwhelming in the extreme. So when we introduce the concept of recovery, especially to young people, we have to realize that a critical part of it is complete abstinence, along with good nutrition and fitness to allow the brain to rewire neural pathways that may have been destroyed by the chemicals that do damage to the human brain. So this is serious business. Understanding what damage the substances, including alcohol, which by the way is classified as a depressant drug, what they do to the human brain. A little sidebar here. 26 plus years ago when I got clean and sober, for good I hope, because I don't want to go back there. I'm sitting in group therapy with my counselor, Margaret, and I was whining to her and asked, Margaret, why am I so depressed all the time? I'll never forget her answer. She said in no uncertain terms, young man, you've been taking a depressant called alcohol every day for 25 years and you sit there wondering why you're so depressed all the time. Uh-oh. So that was my entry into recovery, one day, one lesson at a time. I firmly believe that families and loved ones of alcoholics and addicts need to know a lot more than they currently know about the process of recovery, which is the purpose of this podcast. There are many out there who have in their family an addict or alcoholic in recovery, or who've watched their loved one relapse, also known as going back out there, or you're just curious about what the heck goes on in recovery. Because you see, as normal people, that is, as non-addicts, it's kind of hard to understand what goes on and what to watch for. So Tony, as a young man with solid years of clean and sober living under his belt, will explain some things to our audience. By the way, I love his perspective as only he can express it. So Tony, maybe you can start with that incident that you shared with me about that very moment when a counselor kind of put his arm around you and said, maybe this option could be right for you. The teacher appeared because the pupil was ready. Do I have that right?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, that was and is the turning point in my recovery. Now, I had been to rehab 2 times prior. One in a beautiful, massive Masonic kind of building, 26, all-male, 128 acres of land, working program, Christian rehab, which my mum originally chose. However, they had a intake of, they did originally have a rule like 40, they wouldn't have more than 40% from prison, but they ended up slightly higher. But it was a good program. I committed to it. It was very strict, very regulated.
Can I ask how much it cost your family?
That was actually my first time in rehab, and that was actually, I went through a procedure through my drug and alcohol agency, and I got listed and received that treatment I was nominated for that treatment from a list of candidates who your drug and alcohol agency can put towards. I think it was slightly less, but you're looking at, I think, about £15,000 for 3 months, so about 5,000.
For 3 months. So £5,000 a month, which is about $7,000 US.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. So sorry to interrupt, but I think our audience needs to know a few things about the sacrifices your parents made. So there you are. You're in your third try, right? You're in treatment at this point. So there you are. You're on your third try at treatment, right? At this part of your story, what happened to you and how you responded to it?
So I was in 2 rehabs prior, and this was now my 3rd rehab, of which it was the same rehab I went to the second time. And the first time I was there, I think I said previously in one of our podcasts that to that rehab I was handcuffed in the back of a police car. My second time return to that rehab, I was willing and begging to go to that rehab. Okay. I wanted to go back. I wanted to go there.
Okay.
My downfall from rehab number 1 to rehab number 2 to rehab number 3 was very progressive, very clear. Okay. My health deteriorated. Okay. I spoke about it in my...
Yeah. So explain to our audience the progressive nature of the disease, which is what you're touching upon now. And I want them to hear it from you.
First rehab, 3 months in, committed, plotted and planned. And on the day of my exit, or the day prior to my exit, I managed to smuggle some alcohol in, and I was drinking. The moment I left there, I was on a 2-week bender, because I felt that I deserved it.
Okay. All right.
Rehab number 2. Okay. In between rehab number 1 and rehab number 2, I had a short improvement.
Okay.
Managed to get a bit of clean time. I was going to AA meetings 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
All right.
Touched my first drink. From that first drink, I even remember what it was. I've got a half bottle of gin, some tonic from a local supermarket. I just was happening to walk down the aisle. From that day, the same process repeated day after day after day after day, and I just very quickly was back into just solid drinking, no eating, no showering.
Didn't take long.
It didn't take long. It was very quick. It was very quick, the turning point on there. And then that led to many different complications at home with the police. My behaviour, I was aggressive, everything was bad. There was disappointment in the family due to, obviously, my nature. I'd been in a rehab for 3 months.
Right.
I'd come out and I was drinking, more so than before.
So what were they saying and thinking as after they realized what had happened?
I mean, it was a cocktail of different emotions. It was disappointment, it was anger, it was stress, it was why hasn't this skip worked? They didn't know. They didn't know how to react, and it was a huge concoction
Were they
of
blaming
emotions.
you? What were they doing?
Blaming me.
It sounded like a really nice family to begin with.
Of course, yeah. I mean, they were trying to help, but they didn't know. I think
didn't know how.
Different people react in different ways.
Right.
But I mean, my family, who loved me dearly, cherished me dearly, they were trying to help me. They were trying to protect me. They didn't understand why I was doing what I was doing.
Right.
But that was in between rehab 1 and 2. Now, rehab 2, when I went in there, I mean, I was bad. I was aggressive. I was very bad, physically violent. And then again, that was shorter period of time. That rehab, now, it was private, slightly more expensive. That was £5,000 a week.
Oh.
And that was paid by my parents. And
So we're talking 20...
Yeah, a month, 20
a month.
20 a month, but I was only in there 3 weeks.
All right.
That first time.
£15,000,
Detoxed
almost $20,000 for 3 weeks.
Committed.
$7,000 a week, essentially, to our American
Detoxed
audience.
in, committed, out. Now, I maintained sobriety there for longer.
Okay.
I stuck with the meetings. I got a sponsor.
So somewhat improving results to some extent, but very short in duration.
And again, it got to the turning point where I had that first drink again. And that it was slightly different because I thought that this was a more convincing, I can have a small drink. And then I wouldn't drink for a week.
Right.
I'd have the same drink. And then for another 2 weeks, I wouldn't drink. But again, it just got so bad so quickly after that. I managed to do that for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And then was back onto just everything and anything. Back onto absolutely everything.
You're in for 3 weeks, it costs a lot of money, and then you're out, and you were okay for a while.
I was okay for a while. I was okay for quite some time.
What did you understand about your situation or your disorder? Did you understand anything, or were you just trying to not drink at that point?
I knew that whatever it takes, don't drink.
Okay.
Don't drink. However, there was still fight in me.
Okay.
I was still fighting. Like, I knew it. However, I still wanted to believe that it wasn't the case, that I can't touch anything.
Okay. All right.
I was trying to prove to myself that I can possibly have a drink and be okay.
So some illusion of control still. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
And had it tamed. I thought I had it tamed.
Okay.
So my drinking then started. So period of abstinence, a couple of months, whatever. I had a few jobs on the go.
Had you graduated from university?
This is all past that. This is a long time before.
All right, so good family, university education.
Yeah.
And now here we go. How old were you at this point? 22?
From there, I mean, slowly that drinking crept up. It went from just cider after golf, just a pint of cider. Next week, the same again. After that, 2 pints of cider. Right. After that, 3 pints of cider. Yeah, okay. Progressive, gentle, but I thought I had it tamed. And then as soon as I went back onto the spirits, which is my
poison. Down you went.
Which is my poison,
right.
Vodka.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just, I just went straight back to my old patterns of drinking. Right. A bottle.
So you held it off, and then then it collapsed.
Well, then it went on. I mean, now I had 2 jobs. Now I had a girlfriend, and I was back in the rhythm of drinking, but I still kind of had my life under control.
Oh, okay.
It hadn't destroyed everything in my life yet.
Right.
I was sneaky. I was conniving again with all of this.
You were obsessing too, right? Were you obsessing?
Yeah. It was part of my daily routine.
Okay.
And I managed to hold that for quite some time, drinking 1 to 2 bottles of vodka a day. Right. Slowly, things began to fall apart.
1 or 2 bottles of vodka a day?
Between 1 and 2.
All right, so that's between a 750 to a 1.5, right?
Yeah.
Which is like a big bottle, right? Like what we call a 26 ounce or whatever it is. 1 to 2 of those a day. Big old bottles.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And everything started to fall apart, and I was really getting into a bad state. The doctor was panicking.
So you were seeing a doctor as well during that?
Yeah, I was seeing a doctor. I had to go and have blood tests every week because everyone was so worried about me that my liver function was on its way out.
It's that much booze.
And
Yep.
And that's where my family kind of hit the point of, that's it, we're done.
Okay. So now you go into number 3, or you go back second time into number 2. And what was the space and time between number 2 and number 3, or number 2 again? I don't know, 6 months, 3 months?
I can't really remember.
Okay, that's good.
But I think
that's honest. That's a few months, right?
Say 5 or 6.
Oh, okay, all right.
Half a year.
Right. Yeah, that's
there was a larger gap between rehab number 2 and 3 than 1 and 2.
Okay, all right. So now you're back into rehab number 2 for the second time.
Correct.
And you're there, and there comes a moment. Can you talk to me about that moment when the light went on and the turning point happened for you?
Sure. Going into that rehab, I wanted to go. I asked to go. I really wanted to go. I was familiar with the place. I was familiar with the staff.
Yeah.
I knew the program. Got straight back into it, dived into it, did my detox, committed. And actually, I extended my stay there from 3 weeks again to 5 weeks.
Okay.
And it was during that time, my stay there, that I found out when my mum was coming to visit, she was talking to some of the counsellors, and she was doing everything in her power to basically find a secondary rehab for me. Now, at that point in her mind, she was looking at somewhere called Silver River or Twin Rivers, which was actually in South Africa.
Okay.
My attitude still at that point was F you, F you, F you, and F you to anyone who asked me to do further or longer periods of treatment.
Okay.
I wanted to do a little bit of treatment, but I wanted to be in and out.
Okay.
I didn't kind of understand the benefits, or knew the benefits as such, of long-term sobriety, time underneath your belt, what it gives you in recovery.
Okay.
So, and there was a counsellor there who I was familiar with and I was kind of tight with as such. And he just approached me and just said, my mates or my friend has got a rehab out in Thailand. Why don't you have a look? Or why don't you check it out? Like, honestly, what have you got to lose right now? It's nice, the weather's good out there, the facilities are brilliant, you can get away from everything, you can really clear your head, you can really work on yourself, and just, I mean, why not just give it a shot? Mm-hmm. Why not give it a shot?
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened, I don't know what really went through my head at that time. It's just, I kind of, everything that was there, I just went, just put it on the table, and it's like I gave up. I finally just said, do you know what? Okay, I will have a look. And I know it doesn't sound like a lot.
Right, well, it's turning
But I
point.
went and I had a look.
There was willingness.
And the light in my head, the light went on in my head. When the light normally goes on in my head, I'm very focused. I'm obsessive about whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, whatever it is. That's my natural kind of behaviour.
Right.
I started becoming more and more intrigued, more and more obsessive about this idea of going to Thailand for treatment in my own time. My family didn't know about it. No one knew about it. It was just me and the counsellor. And I started to go and have a look. I then started to communicate with the man in charge in Thailand, got in contact with him. And then next time, when I think my mum, I think it was about a week later, I then voiced it to my family and friends, say, look, I found a place in Thailand. I want to go there. I want to do it. I want to give it a shot. I want to do secondary, but this is where I want to do it.
This is your initiative at this point.
And from there, As I exited that rehab, on my final day, I went home. I got collected. I went home. I packed a suitcase, and I went straight to the airport, and off I went on a plane to Thailand.
Did you book your flight at the airport? Or
No,
did you book
that was done, I think, during the week before I left. But yeah.
Literally, you had it all set up. As soon as you left, you went home, packed, and got on a plane.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. To Bangkok. Wow. So, you talk about temptations and triggers once you've completed treatment, because you're still kind of raw. You know some of the rules, but what were some of the sort of walking around rules that you set for yourself that you learned in treatment, like baby steps, risky situations to avoid, some do's and some don'ts? What kept you sober in the early going?
I think with triggers and temptations, there's the basic list of do this, don't do this. For an alcoholic or for an addict, for an alcoholic as such, I mean, don't go into bars, don't go into pubs, don't go to nightclubs, don't go to areas or places where people are drinking. It's a no-brainer. In general, just don't do it. Don't go to places, other than those obvious ones, where people might be drinking or are drinking. Granted, there will be places which you can't avoid, such as restaurants. There were those kind of things that were kind of just gridded out to start with.
What were some other triggers, or not temptations so much, but other triggers in one's day that could lead you to think that either it's okay or that you need to take a drink?
Places where there's alcohol flowing, places, like I've said, restaurants, pubs, nightclubs, things like that. Then friends,
that you used to have, right?
Friends, I was graced with the friends and privileged to have the friends that I had and kept close. They understood my problem. They only ever supported my problem.
Right.
And even if we were to go to a restaurant or a pub later,
would know. Right.
they would never drink around me.
Okay.
They would all refrain from having a drink. And if they had to, they would even say, do you mind if I have a pint? Right. You can't have one.
Right.
But do you mind if it's okay with you? Then there's the less obvious ones like nightmares or using dreams, drinking dreams, things like that. These things, I mean, from my experience, I didn't have many of them, but sure I did have them for a first few period of months or whatever. Then they kind of, you get one here and there. I know others who have them constantly for years, and different person, different
brain.
Yeah, sure. Then there's stuff like regular basic stuff that you can't avoid, like the supermarket. A supermarket, if you go down the alcohol aisle, to some people that's a trigger. You know, we can say, don't go down the alcohol aisle, don't go into an alcohol shop. If you like, what are you doing there?
Yeah.
What on earth are you doing there?
Yeah.
That is not the place for you.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to associate it to perhaps a drug addict, and not mentioning any in particular, but as an example, let's say someone who's crack is their primary. You wouldn't go into a crack den.
Right.
What business do you have in a crack den if you're trying to stay free of crack?
Right. Have you heard the saying, if you hang around a barber shop, sooner or later you're going to get a haircut?
Of course, yeah.
Right? That's the kind of stuff. So I'm going to back up a little bit. Tell me, in essence, what you learned in treatment. What do you think you learned in treatment? Some basic things that you learned.
So I think...
So you learned that your thinking was off when you got there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did your thinking change? What happened to your mind and to some extent to your heart as well?
I think a lot of that was taking a good, thorough look at yourself, where you are now, what's been happening, and the way forward. That was worked on with a numerous variety different of things, whether that was one-to-one counselling, whether that was an introduction to the AA or the 12-step programs, either one of them, and AAA. The guidelines of things that you can do, things that you can use to help you on this journey, whether it be, as I said, getting a sponsor, going to these meetings. And the meetings was actually quite a big part of every single place I went to. It was not pushed, but it was encouraged to get into that rhythm.
It was presented.
So put that into your daily routine as a norm, because it helps, because it really does. Then background knowledge on the actual chemistry of what happens with addiction to our brain,
right.
the science of everything that happens
Okay.
to your body.
All right.
And then just a combination of just healthy living as opposed to this. And then, like I say, the do's and don'ts. I mean, it literally is a list of the obvious plus an extra kind of guideline of things that you can or should follow, which are only for your own benefit.
Right. So, how
healthy
about
practices is the word I'm looking for.
Healthy practice and healthy thinking, right? So tell me about something you and I have discussed before, and that is the natural, almost predictable resistance that particularly younger people have to the concept of God or a higher power. Can you talk about that? What you yourself felt and what you observe, because you interact with a lot of recovering people today, particularly younger ones. What's your take on all of that?
I mean, I'm quite open-minded. I always have been. I was also brought up as a Catholic Christian, which I don't really have any problems with religion as such. I don't have a problem with the idea of a God or a greater power. I understood, though, from what was in the rooms, is that I could choose whatever. It doesn't matter if I choose...
Critical point, right?
It doesn't matter if I choose the God to my understanding, that I've been brought up Catholic. Obviously, it's God. You know, we have a God. However, I saw more value to it. And then, as time has progressed, to me, the higher power is... Well, how do I explain my higher power? My higher power is, it's not just me. It's a group, a list of people on my phone. Right. It's a network of people. So it's my phone plus a network of people who have been there, done that, or whatever, who I can speak to and have as my support. Okay. It is the most imperative thing for me that I have found that is the most helpful for me.
And it's deeply personal, right?
It's
Everybody
deeply personal,
has their own experience.
But it's shown me that it's my best coping mechanism, my best coping technique is I know myself, and I found out that I need to voice what I feel, what I think. I cannot sit with it. It doesn't matter.
Stuff your feelings anymore like you used to, right?
It doesn't matter who I voice it to, as long as I voice it. Obviously, it means a lot more if I voice it to someone in my network.
So we talk about abandoning your old way of thinking or surrendering your old way of thinking and beginning to believe in a much bigger and better idea as a way of getting around some of that resistance to the concept of a higher power, as a concept of a spiritual higher power, God, and so forth. So it seems to me that you were able to quickly develop your own concept of a higher power as something outside of you, correct?
Correct.
You also talked about the pink cloud syndrome, what the danger is when it starts to vaporize, and it always does. What do you do after you come off of that high?
Just previously I just forgot one thing. So to anyone else who, what I saw in the rooms as an example with the whole God higher power thing, I mean, I found mine. I mean, I had my religious thing, which I consider myself a believer, non-believer. Blah. It doesn't really matter. I found my higher power through what was suggested in the rooms, and that was what was important to me. So to anyone else who struggles with this God or higher power thing, just be open-minded to it. You make your own thing. You make what works for you. Don't be hesitant on that word, and don't let it scare you. It doesn't mean what you necessarily think it means. Just be open-minded, and you will find that it is quite the opposite.
Okay.
With the pink cloud syndrome, I've heard it as well. It's like you come out of recovery, you come out of treatment. Oh, he's just on his pink cloud. He thinks everything's rosy and
sort of a manic state, right?
Yeah, and my opinion on that is I actually think it's a good thing, right? This pink cloud thing. I actually think it brings a lot of positivity, and I think it's a good place to be in.
Well, you're not drinking,
yeah,
right?
As long as that pink, you understand that pink cloud, it might only be a period of time. If it lasts forever, fantastic, brilliant. Why not let it last forever? A lot of people get skeptical about others' recovery when they oh, well, he's on the pink cloud, or he's just on a pink cloud, that'll pass. But it's their own experience. It may last forever. But I think,
good point.
Perhaps be aware that this pink cloud word, pink cloud syndrome, to know or even just kind of to get from it is it the state that you're in, or other people are seeing you in, this happy, bubbly, whatever state, it may not be that way forever. There might be times of hardship. There might be times where things are a bit more difficult. To accept the fact that life is not just like that all the time.
Right.
And prepare yourself for times which are difficult and this and that. But it does not mean that you can't get back onto your pink cloud.
Right.
But it's not always going to be fairy tales, rainbows.
Right.
This is life we're talking about.
I talk about being in the zone, right? And for me and a few other guys that I know, it's like being in the zone is being fully present in sober life, not carrying the burdens of yesterday or being haunted by the fears of tomorrow, because tomorrow doesn't exist in its own reality. And being on the razor's edge of now, living in the now, not for the now, but in the now. Would you agree with that take?
Yeah. I see exactly what you mean, and I do agree with what you're saying.
Well, you're in the zone a lot, so that's the way I see it. Is when somebody's eyes are bright.
Yeah,
you're not hiding from anything. You're expressing your emotions. You're doing it in a kind way. You're not hostile. You're not hiding from people. You're an honest, upright, decent, accountable citizen. No longer a menace to society. How's that?
Okay, but it doesn't mean I don't have times of hardship. It doesn't mean I don't have times of stress or panic or anger or sadness or all these kind of feelings that are negative.
Human things.
Of course, because I am human.
Right.
However, it doesn't mean that I need to use or drink. Right. I get through those feelings, or I sit with those feelings and I get through them with the help of my peers or my network or my phone or whatever.
Whereas before,
what did we do? Problem. I run to what I think is a solution, which is the substance or the alcohol. That's all changed.
Right. So we don't have anymore. We don't have a drinking problem, but we do have a thinking problem.
We do.
What do you want to close with?
You mentioned you wanted to talk about signs of relapse.
Right. Okay. What does a family look for? Okay, that's a good topic before we wrap this one up.
Honestly, your family will be in this like bloodhounds. Your family know when something's up. Your family know you. You'll feel and you'll see when things are starting to go a little bit off track. The behaviour is the kind of, I think, the biggest red flag. It's you see when things, there's things we call red flags, and you'll be able to pick up on them. I think.
Well, examples being late, starting to be late for everything. Right?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some other ones? Lying about where you were. Right.
Sure.
Okay. Explaining away why the hell you're in jail for the night. Example.
Okay.
It's not. Or blaming others. Stuff that happens to you. Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that list?
I think maybe even just small things like becoming a bit more distant.
Okay.
I mean, if you know
irritable, stuff like.
Perfect one. Irritable, detached. Detached.
Yeah. Hostile, maybe. Even.
Yeah, I think they're just clear signs. It doesn't mean if they're irritable, if they're being a bit detached. That is the reason for a relapse coming up.
Or
but it means,
you may not be relapsing. You may just be having a bad friggin' day.
You might be having a hard time.
Yeah.
You might be having a hard time. But they're kind of the ones that stick out there.
The alcoholic dry drunk syndrome almost, right?
If you know the individual, this is your family member, if they're going to meetings and suddenly they've stopped going to meetings, I mean, you can consider that a bit of a...
Sure. Usually it is.
A problem. But again, these aren't things that can't be fixed with a simple conversation. And again, another thing that I would always say that I see quite a lot, and I would just be aware of this, conversations can always be had. But it's important to find the right time to have that conversation, especially it's vital, in my opinion, just from what I've seen, that the two parties involved have to be on the same level. That means don't approach them last thing before bed. Don't approach them or have a conversation when someone's rushing to something or has something important to do.
Find the window.
Organise it and find the appropriate time, because a conversation can go so far. It can honestly go so far, and it's just finding the right time to have it.
How about this notion that we learn in intervention studies, that you intervene or you confront the person with a loving attitude, on the one hand, right?
Yeah.
But also consequences on the other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay. So, let's see. Essential things that are important to maintain your recovery, your healthy habits that restore brain health. Talk about those: diet, exercise. I'd also talk about courage, which we find when we ask for it from our higher power to confront things that we do not want to confront, that we were afraid of before, but now we have to, right?
Yeah, they're the basics. I mean, the very basics is sleep. Maintain a normal, regular sleeping pattern. So don't go to bed too late. Wake up at normal time. That's a very basic thing which they teach you in facilities and things, because when we're in using, it's just so distorted. So sleeping pattern, good normal sleeping pattern. Make sure you get enough sleep. Eating pattern. Your body needs fuel, preferably 3 times a day at appropriate times, not just rushing or squeezing something in last minute
and
of the
a
day.
balanced diet
Feed
as well.
yourself. Feed
Properly.
yourself, and well.
Yep.
Doesn't mean overfeed with stuff that's bad for you, but maintain a healthy, normal, balanced diet. And exercise is the third one, that your body is just something that it needs, it requires, it wants, it genuinely functions better if you provide it with a bit of exercise.
And you get a little endorphin kick once in a while.
And it goes hand in hand with the sleep and the eating. Get a healthy bit, practice a healthy bit of exercise. I mean, those are the primary 3 things that your body does need. And then, obviously, you can, normal habits, whether it is your meeting, whether it is this 12-step program and the step work that you'll be introduced to, that's all good and beneficial for you. But other things, a bit of social interaction, stuff for your mind, whether it be meditation, mindfulness, listening to some music, watching some, whatever it is.
Innocent pursuits.
Feeding the soul with stuff that...
Right.
keeps you positive, feeding the brain, keeps developing that brain with just stuff that you're intrigued with, whether it be reading, whether it be sports or anything.
What we say in recovery, in AA, we say it's not enough to stop doing the bad stuff. You got to replace doing the bad stuff with doing good stuff.
Yeah, and then the crazy thing is, as soon as you get clean and sober, you get a bit of time, you do the things that are suggested, and that brain starts opening, and your sobriety it allows, not only does your brain start opening, your drive starts coming back, but things start opening up for you, and you become more creative, you become more passionate. You have all this life that is so new to you. It's so new to you. It's like being, I don't want to say reborn as an extravagant thing, but it really, the doors of life kind of start opening. You transform, and you're beginning to actually seize the beauties of life that are out there for you to go and enjoy.
You're no longer operating with blinders now.
Tunnel vision on destruction.
Right.
No.
Now you're in the light. Very good. Excellent recap. Is there anything else you want to, leave us with today?
Recovery in general. We go through these hard times, but by no means is it the end of the road. We say there's light at the end of the tunnel. If you do the things that are suggested, if you go and practice, it's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect. And you keep doing it with practice, and the other main thing that I would say is time. Time is definitely a huge factor in just making the whole process easier. The more time you have underneath your hands, the more chance and the more likely you are to continue to succeed and stay on that right path.
So in the 12th step in AA, the last sentence is, practice these principles in all our affairs, right?
Yeah.
So what we're asked to do is to adopt a completely new set of principles, adopt a set of values that we freely violated when we were drinking and using, and now replace those corrupt ideas with new values.
Yeah.
And we're then asked to practice these principles, these values, in all our affairs.
Yeah.
So in our jobs, at the grocery store, and particularly in our families, with our families, the people that we're closest to are the ones that we hurt the most.
Yeah.
And to them we owe an amends. One form of an amend is living an amended life, right? Making sure that you've become now the decent human being that they always knew you were.
Sure.
But you violated with drinking and using.
And there's the principle, and then in the step as well, it's as soon as that time comes and you actually start giving back to someone else, it's one of those little light moments where it's different for everyone. I've seen it in different individuals at different times, and by giving back what you've learned or what you see to believe and how you are now, giving someone else that bit of strength, that bit of hope, that bit of guidance, it really does unlock something for you.
Right.
And it really does fuel your own recovery as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony. We'll come back at it again with a new topic and your energetic and genius insights into recovery.
Thanks so much, Bruno.
You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in today. It's my fervent hope we've given you new insight and new hope that will lighten your burden. For our hearts go out to all who suffer the effects of addictive disorder. Please give us your feedback at info@safehouserehab.com. By all means, ask us any question you like, and we'll answer on air if you will. And if you want to leave us your first name and city, we'll recognize you too, of course. This podcast is sponsored by safehouserehab.com, where we take a modern approach to recovery, something all families of those who suffer deserve. Tune in next week for more.